What impact would the long layover have on this team? Now, I'm not saying that as an excuse because Georgia, Alabama, Cincinnati had to deal with the same layover. Layovers, right? Yeah. But but it is a factor, and everybody's different. Every team's different how they respond to it. And how was Michigan for a team? I thought out of, and I said this, after the Big Ten title game, out of the four teams, I thought Michigan was playing the best football down the stretch. So I thought out of any of the teams, they could be the most impacted potentially with the long layover between the championship game to this playoff game. And that did not look like the same Michigan football team. And one of the biggest characteristics that you can, signs that points to that was that they were doing some very uncharacteristic things tonight that they haven't done all season. They were beating themselves, right? It's not just that Georgia beat them every play. No, I mean, how many false stars did you see, Desmond? Like
A lot.
drop passes, things that this team just hasn't done. And when you're playing against a really good team like Georgia, you can't afford to do that. And one of the pros and the that we have said about this Michigan team all year that gave them a chance, no matter who they played, was that they don't beat themselves. They play disciplined football, and they're going to stay within themselves, and they're just going to you're going to have to just beat them, just out execute them. But they're not going to hurt themselves in the midst of the game, right? That was a big thing we talked about when we were talking about the championship game. Corey was like, "Well, all these things you need Iowa to get." Well, that's not going to happen tonight. Not only did Georgia out execute Michigan, but Michigan beat themselves and fumbles. Blake Corn fumbling the ball. And so that's disappointing, right? Because you can't just say, man, you know, we played a good game. Georgia just had the better athletes. No, Michigan also going to beat themselves a little bit too. But you can say that and still not be disappointed overall, which I'm not. But you have to admit that Michigan definitely kicked themselves a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying Michigan could have played a lot better. And to me, and we talk about this a lot, Dre, off air and off the podcast is I am one that my philosophy, especially when it comes to football, is it's always the things that you do, not necessarily what the other team does. If you control the controllables, the things that you have control over, overall you're gonna have success. If you control those things and you execute at a high level, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be fine. Like you called me earlier today. You were just like, I don't know what at that point the score was for the Alabama game, but it was maybe 17-6. And you're like, man, it
17-3.
looks like you guys are gonna win and it's gonna be fine. And I'm like, yeah, but we're not playing. We're not executing at a high level. And it
Right.
and when you get to number one, the college football playoff, but in general, in big games, those things matter, and it's important that you come in and that you do play at a high level and that you execute at a high level. For Michigan, the the part that it's going to sound like an excuse, and why they didn't play well, so on and so forth. But to me, they made a lot of mistakes, a lot of self-inflicted wounds, dropping the football, guys outside of their run fits, false starts, bad routes, bad throws, balls getting batted down. Like it came just again and again and again. And I definitely want to give Georgia the credit because they came
Yeah.
out and they didn't make those mistakes. But
Right.
at the same time, too, if you come out and you execute at a high level with the talent that Michigan has on this team, you could have beaten this Georgia team. I truly believe that, and I want to make sure I say too, because early on the stream I said that if my prediction was Michigan was going to win this game 35-31. And I told someone who was a Georgia fan who was on the stream, but if I was wrong, I'd come on and say I'm wrong. I was wrong. I was wholeheartedly wrong, 1,000%. So I want to get that out there in the clear. But I just it was, I think the odd part and probably the shock for most Michigan fans was this didn't look like the Michigan team that we saw for the previous 13 games. This did
Right.
not look like them. There wasn't a single part of this game today that you could look at and say, "Oh yeah, I saw this against Ohio State. I saw this against Iowa." There's not a single one because that and it's unfortunate because you look at teams overall and you're everybody's is due to have a letdown. Everybody's due to have one of those off games to where you say, "Oh man, like it just wasn't our night," and that's one of the friends of we're here, watching a game with. We were talking about Cade, and he's just like, "Are they gonna pull Cade?" And I'm just like, "Well, I don't think they need to." And this was like, in the third quarter, and it got to the point where he just looked at me again and was just like, "Do you think they need to pull Cade?" And I'm just like, I don't think that this game is his fault. I don't think things are going poorly because of Cade. I'm like, but it's just kind of one of those things where it's just like I just don't think it's his night. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so the difficult part is because we haven't seen Michigan perform like this in these big games this year. It's kind of disappointing, but it is what it is. Like I said, when you
Yeah,
get
but the
to
whole the whole like
this
pulling.
this level, dude, it's hard. It's hard. It's difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah, the whole pulling Cade thing. I mean, like, look, it wasn't Cade's night, but the conundrum is you have one guy in Cade who has gotten you here, right? Not perfect by all means, but has been steady Eddie the entire season, right? He personifies what you do well, which is you don't beat yourself. Typically, right? He's not going to make a lot of turnovers. Typically, he's not going to make the wrong decision. Now, rather physically, what he can do, that plays itself out one way or the other, but he is safe, right? So now this guy's gotten you here further than you've been in what 20 years, what 2004? Well, not 20 years, but what 17 was that 17 years further than you've been in 17 years as a program, right? With this kid. And so like now you get here and it's not his night to pull him. That's a heck of a call. Now we've seen Saban do that in a national title game with Jalen Hurts to put into a. So it has been done, but just because Harbaugh didn't do that, I don't think it was necessarily an egregious decision to ride with Cade essentially till the game was over and they let JJ have the fourth quarter. I understand why they did that, and I will say this, and we'll talk about this going forward. You know, has this was that third quarter, that fumble was at the last snap Kate McNamara has at the University of Michigan. I will say it's a possibility. I'm not saying it's likely, but the question that question will linger going to this off season. Was that the last time? And they kind of showed him. I can't read the kid's head, but they showed a clip of him on the sideline, and you kind of this is during the fourth quarter while JJ was playing. He looked like, man, I want to get back out there. And I couldn't help but wonder in his head, is he like, this is it?